ethically, it was very important that we did the whole thing with due respect, really, for confidentiality and for keeping any reports that we've got anonymous and for keeping things in-house. Because to begin with, you know, children and the young people were quite nervous about sort of expressing themselves and saying what their views were about themselves and about the different, you know, aspects of their spirituality. So that was an important part of the process all the way through. So that's just a slide of 2 or 3 of the groups doing some of the human mapping. So based at the youth centre, that's the poster which young people helped to design, which went around the local area, just saying about the faith factor space once a month. A couple of the youngsters giving their PowerPoint presentation to the rest of the group. That particular bit was about different faiths and what that means to them. So in terms of the outcomes, there were some really interesting things that came out of this project. The active participation was one thing. Young people were really motivated by this whole thing because they helped to put it together from the start, and it really came from them. And there was quite a different group, as I was saying, of young people getting involved in this, and managed to see it through and are still involved once a month, so over a year now. And the diversity, as I mentioned, was also something that interested us a lot, that we were worried that, you know, as staff, that with a predominantly white working class population in Patchway, we were going to find it very difficult to reach out to different groups in the community. But there was, you know, an active participation by a small but very significant number of young people from different backgrounds. And also that helped the children and young people who'd never really thought about difference in the community have their awareness raised. There was a great deal of reflection and discussion and learning that went on, particularly at the beginning of this year, sort of just after Christmas. The group really came together and, you know, felt a lot more comfortable with each other and learnt stuff and discussed stuff and reflected on things that they wouldn't necessarily get the time or feel comfortable with at school or at home. And there, I think, are elements of their personal development that are going to carry through their lives, probably. I mentioned earlier that they feel and felt a lot more confident in expressing themselves about different personal issues. It was an important outcome. And particularly, the awareness about the different spiritual links between human beings. So even though it was quite clear that there were a lot of difference in the beliefs and the ideas that children and young people had about spiritual issues generally and about faith and their beliefs, there was this awareness that we all had, really, that came through the process, that we are human beings and that there's this common spiritual, some call it human spirit link between us. And some of the young people from different ethnic backgrounds were saying, well, it doesn't really matter in that sense what your skin colour is or what your culture is, even though that's important. There's this kind of common link that they thought about and discovered called being human between us. And that is one thing also that I've been asked by the children and young people to say, you know, if you're going to work with different young people or people from the community who come from, who might be black and minority ethnic groups, one of the ways that certainly in our group we all felt comfortable with was just concentrating on that part about being human and what that just means in a neutral sense. And that also goes for the links between different faiths. As you can see in the DVD in a minute, there was an awareness that there's this kind of common spirit between different faiths, even though when we had quite a good, one of the faith factor sessions that we had was during One World Week, and there was a real loud voice, I think, from particularly some of the more boisterous teenagers who, you know, wanted to say a lot about, one of them was Buddhist and say a lot about their faith, another was Muslim, and 2 of the staff were Muslim as well, and talking about, yeah, where they come from in terms of their faith and cultures, but also what, you know, what is it that we've all got in common here in terms of the different faiths. And I mean, we could write a book just from that one session, but just the idea of something else than just human beings, some kind of God factor, if you like, and we didn't quite know what to call that, but something else, for example. Okay. Also during the Faith Factor sessions, the need for peace was a common factor between different diverse young people as well. And they used art particularly as a way of describing that and expressing it. Also respect for nature. So these are things that, you know, they were asked to come up with, or they just came up with anyway, really, what faith and beliefs they wanted to talk about to do with the world. And those were two big elements there. So finally, just globally really, the self-awareness that was raised about diversity, about their faith, beliefs and spirituality, and the links between us as different people, as I've said earlier, was an overall outcome that I was quite blown away by, actually. It was I've been doing youth work now for about 20 years, and it's probably, I mean, you'll see from the DVD, you know, it made a real impact on some of the children and young people that have never really thought about or had the chance to reflect on difference and being aware of oneself and going a bit deeper, but in a fun way. Just finally on the research conclusions, there was a particular element that came out of the research that showed that the young participants that we work with, although we couldn't generalize about young people in general because it was quite a small case study, but certainly the young people that we work with, you know, are aware of their spiritual selves, beliefs and faiths. Those beliefs and faiths and views are religious as well as secular. So some of the young people did link it very much to their own religious backgrounds and beliefs, but there are quite a few young people who didn't really have a religious background and faith with a capital F as such, but were very spiritual. So one of the two of the comments were, I don't really go to church, or I don't have religion, but I do believe in the human spirit and God, if I want to call it that. But again, it was that word they were a bit uncertain about. There was an awareness about different beliefs, as I've said, but particularly through the research element of this, it did get young people thinking about different faiths and beliefs. And one of the young people up on the DVD will certainly, you can hear about that. Young people, because of the question they came up, what does spiritual faith mean to you, saw that, or felt that this was something that was quite distinct actually from religious faith. And in many different ways. So it wasn't really about, if you like, what one young person called the nuts and bolts of religion. So you know, going to church and which book you believe in, as they put it, but more about the spirituality behind that or beneath it, and what the real human spirit and values mean from your heart and soul. And that is really what was linking up the young people in the research project. They only got to talk to each other about this really at the end when the DVD was shown to all of them as a group, because they wanted at the time to be just individually interviewed and not in a group. But they could see that there was these common spiritual links between each other and also between the different values and beliefs that they were talking about and religions. Again, going back to something they just call spirit.